the invisible voice. The grand hall of the Galactic Council shimmered with crystalline light. Thousands of delegates filled the chamber, each perched upon elevated seats carved from alloy and stone, spiraling upward like a cathedral of stars. Voices layered over one another in a chorus of alien tongues. Clicking mandibles, thrumming chords, metallic vocalizers, high-pitched screeches. A cacophony that somehow settled into order when the speaker's staff struck the floor. The great chamber dimmed, focusing on the central dais. From there, each race could present their envoy. They came draped in silk spun from living worms, cloaks woven of metallic feathers, or armored shells glistening with polished exoskeleton plates. Every envoy radiated power, heritage, and status. And then there was him, the human ambassador. He stood alone in a plain gray uniform, cloth worn thin at the elbows, his boots scuffed from travel. No entourage, no banners, no heraldry, just a man. To most, he was invisible, a footnote in a gathering where empires debated the fates of galaxies. The first dismissal. The council floor erupted as the Rin delegate, a serpentine creature of translucent scales, presented their case for a new trade blockade. The crowd listened in rapt attention, hanging on every syllable as if the universe shifted with their words. When it was the humans' turn, the chamber fell silent in a very different way. The speaker inclined their crystalline head. Representative of Earth. The pause lingered. The words sounded foreign, unimportant. The silence that followed carried amusement. The ambassador, his name was Jonathan Hale, stepped forward. His voice was steady, though it carried no amplifier, no vibrating resonance organ, no psionic hum. Just a man's voice. Honorable Council, I thank you for your time. My people bring proposals not of war or wealth, but of cooperation. We offer, but already seats shifted. Delegates turned away, their attention dissipating like smoke. A ripple of dismissive clicks echoed. One delegate actually yawned, exposing rows of needle-sharp teeth. The speaker's staff struck the ground once. Noted. Next envoy. Jonathan's words died in his throat. He stood there for a heartbeat, then another, before stepping back. Invisible again. Whispers in the halls. Outside the chamber, the whispers were louder than the speeches. Why invite them at all? Hissed a scaled emissary. The humans? Their world barely survived its own climate collapse. They beg for scraps, while true powers shape the stars. Jonathan walked past them in silence, fists clenched at his sides. He had expected resistance, of course. Humanity was a newcomer, a speck compared to civilizations that spanned millennia. Earth's fleets were small, its colonies young, its influence negligible. But expectation was different from experience. It was one thing to anticipate being dismissed. It was another to stand in the chamber of 1,000 voices and feel yourself vanish before you even spoke. A small voice in a vast chamber. That night, Jonathan sat alone in his quarters, staring at the stars beyond the crystalline walls. Each one was claimed, mapped, fought over by species who saw themselves as titans. Earth's star Sol was just another dot. But he remembered why he was here. On his desk lay a worn photograph. Black and white, old. Soldiers in ragged uniforms, standing shoulder to shoulder, eyes bright with defiance despite the mud on their boots. They had been underestimated too. Jonathan picked up the photo, set it back down, and whispered, "They'll listen. They have to." The second attempt. The following day, the chamber roared again with debate. A warlord from the core dominion pounded their armored fists, demanding reparations from weaker neighbors. The audience leaned in, hungry for the drama of giants. Jonathan's name was called again. This time, he didn't walk meekly to the center. He strode. His boots echoed on the crystalline floor, a steady rhythm that cut through the noise. He didn't bow. He didn't lower his eyes. "Counselors," he said, his voice carrying a sharp edge. "Yesterday, you dismissed me before I finished. That was your right. Today, I ask only for 5 minutes. If you still find no worth in my words, I will walk out of this chamber and never return." There was a stir. Arrogance was common here, Defiance was not. Some leaned forward with predatory interest, curious to watch him stumble again. The speaker inclined their head. Proceed. Jonathan inhaled slowly. I stand here not to ask for pity, not to beg for scraps, but to remind you of something you've forgotten. His words hung there. Many expected him to falter, but instead he straightened his shoulders. You think of Earth as weak, backward, a world that nearly destroyed itself. You see our small fleets, our unpolished envoys, our lack of grandeur. But strength is not measured in how loudly you speak here. He paused, his eyes scanning the chamber. Strength is measured in where you come from. The murmurs begin. Some counselors frowned, confused. Others whispered, "Where is he from? What does he mean?" Jonathan's lips curved into the faintest smile. Let me tell you about my world. He spoke not of Earth's failures, but of its survival. Of a species that had clawed itself through ice ages and infernos, through famine and plague, through wars that scorched continents, yet still endured. He spoke of hands that built from rubble, of voices that rose from ashes. We come from a planet that tried to kill us 1,000 times, and each time we adapted. We are not the strongest, the fastest, or the oldest race, but we are the ones who refuse to stay down. A ripple moved through the chamber. Delegates shifted. Eyes turned toward him that had previously looked away. The weight of history. Jonathan reached into his uniform pocket. Slowly, he placed something on the dais. A small bronze medal, tarnished with age. This is from a war fought long before we had ships to carry us to the stars. It was awarded to a soldier who survived impossible odds, who held the line when retreat would have been easy. He let the silence stretch. Every human carries that same defiance. It is carved into us by the world that birthed us. Earth is not gentle. It never was. It forged us in struggle. And that is why, even in the darkest battles, we endure. Cracks in the wall. The core warlord leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. For the first time, he looked at Jonathan not with amusement, but with calculation. The Rin delegate flicked their tongue nervously. Even the speaker tilted their crystalline head. Something had shifted. Jonathan knew it. He pressed on. You think we are weak because we don't display power like you do. But weakness is not in the size of fleets or the glitter of wealth. Weakness is in forgetting what made you strong. Humanity remembers. Always. He stepped back. And that is why I am here. A chamber stunned. The silence that followed was unlike before. This was not dismissal but wait. The kind of silence that follows a blade being drawn. For the first time, the counselors did not look through him. They looked at him. The speaker's staff struck the ground. Slower this time. Your words are noted. We shall adjourn. And with that, the session ended. But as Jonathan walked out, he felt the eyes on him. Watching. Measuring. For the first time, the invisible man had become something else. Something dangerous. The weight of origin. The council chamber was quieter the next day. No laughter, no mocking whispers. Delegates entered with guarded eyes, casting glances toward the human envoy as if he had transformed overnight into something more dangerous than an enemy warship. Jonathan Hale sat alone at his station. His uniform was still plain, his boots still scuffed, his hair a little unkempt from too many nights without sleep. But today the weight in the air pressed differently. The aliens did not look past him. They looked at him, and they wondered. The uneasy murmurs. The session opened with routine disputes. The Thalrian Empire arguing about mining rights in the Curus Belt. The Veari Syndicate protesting tariffs on antimatter trade. Their voices droned like distant thunder. But the attention of many delegates drifted again and again to the solitary figure of the human. He spoke as if his world forged warriors. Empty words. Every race has struggles. But there was something in his tone. Not bluff, not pride. Memory. The speaker finally lifted their crystalline staff. Representative of Earth, you may approach. Jonathan rose, every step deliberate. The challenge. This time, the counselors leaned forward. The Rin delegate, their scales flickering faintly, hissed. You speak of strength forged in adversity. but all worlds temper their people. What makes yours different? A booming voice joined in. It was the core warlord, armored like a walking fortress. Yes, little human, you speak boldly, but all I see is a fragile world, barely crawling into the stars. Tell us, then, where do you come from that dares to command our attention? The chamber grew still. Even the speaker leaned in. Jonathan clasped his hands behind his back. His voice was calm, steady. You want to know where I am from? Not my world, but my place. Then listen well. The revelation. He let the silence stretch until every eye, every lens, every receptor was fixed on him. I am from Earth, yes. A small world, a young world by your reckoning. But more than that, I am from Normandy. The word echoed strangely, foreign to alien tongues. Jonathan continued, his tone sharpening. It was there that my people fought an invader who sought to crush us beneath endless war. Outnumbered, outgunned, outmatched we stood. Farmers, factory workers, students, they became soldiers. And together, they held the line against machines of war that darkened the skies. A flicker of memory touched his voice, a weight carried from generations past. Normandy was not just a place. It was a message that humanity does not break, even when every calculation says we should. The chamber murmured uneasily. The word carried no meaning for them, yet the weight of it pressed like a storm. Ripples of recognition. Jonathan stepped forward, placing the bronze medal once more on the dais. He let it catch the light. This is not my medal. It belonged to one who fought there, who survived when logic said survival was impossible. That spirit lives in every human today, and it lives in me. Delegates shifted, exchanging glances. The core warlord's expression hardened. The Rin delegate hissed softly, but others leaned forward with something unfamiliar in their eyes, respect. Jonathan's voice deepened. When you dismiss me, you dismiss not one man. You dismiss a lineage carved in blood and fire. My people have bled on battlefields you cannot imagine, under skies turned to ash, against enemies who thought themselves invincible. And each time we endured. He locked eyes with the warlord. Do you understand what that means? It means we will endure again. The pushback. The chamber erupted. Voices clashed. Translators struggled to keep pace. Arrogant ape. You compare your primitive wars to ours. Stories. Every race has stories. But did you feel it? The conviction? He believes. The speaker raised their staff, restoring silence. Their crystalline form gleamed in the dim light. Human, you claim lineage of war and survival. Yet words are smoke. Give us reason to believe. Jonathan's lips curved faintly. Reason? Very well. The proof. He gestured, and his datapad projected an image into the center of the chamber. Grainy black and white footage filled the air. Battered soldiers storming beaches under fire. Waves churning red. Skies torn by smoke. Alien delegates leaned forward, transfixed. These are my people, Jonathan said softly. This was Normandy. The invader believed it impossible for us to succeed. But we did. At a cost no calculation could justify. Because for us, victory is not about numbers. It is about necessity. The footage shifted. Cities in ruins, yet civilians clearing rubble with bare hands. Fleets of rusted ships crossing oceans. Pilots strapping themselves into fragile machines and rising to meet overwhelming forces. Jonathan's voice cut through the silence. You measure power in fleets, in empires, in centuries. We measure it in resolve. You cannot break us, because Earth itself tried for millennia and failed. The turning point. The chamber sat frozen. Some stared in disbelief, others with unease. Then the core warlord rose to his full height, armored plates clashing. His voice rumbled like an avalanche. Your species fought and survived. That I see. But you stand here with no fleets, no dominions. Why should we fear you? Jonathan did not flinch. Because we are what you have forgotten how to be. The words struck like a blade. You have grown soft behind your fleets, your empires, your shields. You measure battles in simulations and treaties. We measure them in scars. You dismiss us as weak because our ships are few, our colonies young. But weakness is not what you see. It is unfamiliarity. You cannot comprehend us, because you have never faced a people who do not stop. He paused, eyes narrowing. But you will. The aftershock. The silence was heavy. The warlord lowered himself slowly back into his seat, his expression unreadable. The Rin delegate coiled and uncoiled nervously. The speaker tilted their crystalline head, refracting light across the chamber. At last, the speaker spoke. Counselors, I suggest we reconsider our assumption of this representative. The staff struck the floor. Earth shall be granted recognition, not as a subject, but as a sovereign voice. A wave of reaction swept through the hall. Outrage from some, disbelief from others. But among the murmurs, something else lingered, caution. The man who could not be ignored. Jonathan gathered his medal, tucking it back into his pocket. He inclined his head, not in servitude, but acknowledgement. As he left the chamber, the whispers followed him. He turned their laughter into silence. A single man with only words. No, not words. Something heavier. In the corridors, aides rushed to contact their fleets, their rulers, their intelligence divisions. The galaxy had just shifted, and every empire felt the tremor. Because they had heard the truth. The human ambassador was from Earth. And Earth was a world that refused to die. Epilogue: The Unseen Weapon. Later, alone in his quarters, Jonathan looked once more at the stars beyond the crystalline walls. They glittered like 1,000 eyes watching. He whispered to the night, "You wanted to know where I'm from. Now you do." And in the great halls of power, empires whispered too. Not of Normandy, not of medals, not of speeches. They whispered of the species that had walked into their council invisible, and left as a shadow on every mind. Humanity had spoken, and the galaxy would never ignore them again.